You are listening to PastThink.com audiobook. Please like and subscribe, thank you. Chapter 68. Guanzhong attacks Cao Cao's camp with just 100 horsemen. Zhuo Xi taunts Cao Cao with a flung cup. News of Cao Cao's shift of all his main forces from Guanzhong to Hefei swiftly reaches Sun Quan. He is busy gathering his forces together at Ruxu. In response to the threat from Cao Cao, he has 50 warships made ready under the command of Dong Shi and Su Sheng. Meanwhile, Chen Wu patrols the riverbanks. Zhang Zhao points out that Cao Cao's men will have traveled great distances, and so the best time to strike will be when they have just arrived, weary and tired. On hearing this, Ling Tong steps forward and offers to strike the first blow. "How many men will you need?" asks Sun Quan. "I can do this with just 3,000, replies Ling Tong. Suddenly his bitter rival Guanzhong speaks up, 3,000? Well, I can do this with just 100 horsemen. This triggers the old rivalry between Ling Tong and Guanzhong, and they actually start to fight there, and then in front of Sun Quan. He stops them and urges them not to underestimate the strength of Cao Cao. He agrees that Ling Tong should go with his 3,000 men and search the area for any sign of Cao Cao's advance party. If he spots them, then he should engage with them. Arriving at the barrier at Ruxu, Cao Cao's army is soon spotted, and Ling Tong rides out to engage them. He personally challenges Zhang Liao, and they fight many rounds, but neither prevails. Ling Tong is ordered by Sun Quan to return, with little to show for his efforts. Guanzhong, delighted by his foe's failure, asks Sun Quan for permission to attack with his 100 men. "If I lose even one man, then you can say I have failed," he brags. In the middle of the night, Guanzhong and the 100 set out, wearing white goose feathers in their helmets to identify themselves. Storming the barricades of the enemy camp, they create so much noise and confusion that Cao Cao's men think they are being attacked by thousands, not by a mere 100. Slashing their way through the camp, they spread chaos and mayhem, and then, as swiftly as they arrived, they gallop out by the south gate and return triumphantly home. Not a single man or horse has died. Great is the praise heaped upon Guanzhong by Sun Quan. The following day Zhang Liao rides out and challenges the enemy. Ling Tong, spurred on by jealousy of Guanzhong's success the night before, responds by charging into single combat battle with Zhang Liao's companion Eugene. Their confrontation is heated, but after 50 bouts neither has gained the upper hand. Hearing of this confrontation, leaders on both sides come to watch the contest, and at a critical moment Cao Cao secretly orders Cao Xiu to fire an arrow at Ling Tong. The arrow brings down his horse, and Eugene races forward with his spear raised to slay Ling Tong. But at the crucial moment, in response, an arrow flies out from the Southerners and hits Eugene in the face. In agony he falls from his horse. In the ensuing chaos men rush forward from both sides to rescue their own people and bring the battle to an end. When Ling Tong comes to Sun Quan to apologize for having failed, he is quietly told that his life was saved by that arrow. To his astonishment he is told that it was fired by none other than Guanzhong. From that day on the old feud is forgotten, and they became bosom pals. The next day, the war takes a much more dramatic turn. Cao Cao launches 5 separate forces against Ruxu. The fighting sways this way and that, Wu's troops sack one of the Wei camps, a storm sinks a Wu ship with one of the main commanders on board, and all perish. Pang De confronts Chen Wu in a maelstrom of fighting by the Ruxu wall, and Sun Quan rides out with Zhou Tai to help Chen Wu, only to find himself trapped between 2 of the Wei forces. Cao Cao spots the danger that Sun Quan is in and the possibility of killing or capturing him. He orders Su Chu to attack immediately. The shock of his entry into the battle splits the Wu forces, leaving Sun Quan dangerously exposed. Things are going very badly indeed for Sun Quan. Zhou Tai, one of his most loyal commanders, has fought his way through to the riverbank, but, realizing Sun Quan is not with him, he plunges back into the fray, crying, "Where's our lord?" to which men shout back, "There, in the thick of the enemy." Charging into the melee, Zhou Tai reaches Sun Quan and cries, "Follow me, my lord." So saying, he turns and slashes his way back out again. But once again, when he reaches the shore, he finds Sun Quan is no longer with him. Undeterred, he once again plunges back into the fray, slashing his way through until he again reaches Sun Quan. "There's no escape," cries Sun Quan, as arrows and crossbow bolts rain down on them. "You go first," shouts Zhou Tai, "and I'll follow." As Sun Quan surges forward, Zhou Tai fights left and right to defend him as warriors slash at him and arrows strike him. But at last he brings Sun Quan to the shore and gets him into a rescue boat. "Without Zhou Tai coming back 3 times I would not have survived," says Sun Quan to his men. "But where's Su Sheng? Is he still trapped?" Hearing this, Zhou Tai turns yet again and throws himself into the battle until he reaches Su Sheng, who is surrounded by the enemy. Smashing his way through, he brings Su Sheng to safety. Both of them are badly wounded and only just make it onto the rescue boat. Just as it seems inevitable that Chao's men will overwhelm the southerners, Lu Sun, the son-in-law of Sun So, appears with 100,000 men and drives Chao's men back. The Wei suffer terrible losses, and thousands of their horses are seized by the triumphant Wu. However, great sadness descends upon Sun Quan when the body of Chen Wu is found lying upon the battlefield. For a month there is an impasse, but finally a truce is declared. Now that peace has been restored, Cao Cao withdraws to the capital, while Sun Quan returns to his base at Moling. Back at the imperial capital, the pressure to give Cao Cao the title King of Wei grows, and grows until Emperor Xian has no option but to agree. In the middle of AD 216, Cao Cao is enthroned as King of Wei. Cao Cao soon makes full use of his new kingly authority. He has heralds to clear the way as if he is the emperor, and builds himself a grand palace at Yejuan. All this is, of course, part of his designs to establish his own dynasty. Planning for the establishment of his dynasty, he decides to name his heir apparent. His main wife, Lady Ding, is barren while his concubine Lady Lu lost her son Chao Ong during the war. So he initially shows as Chao Ji, famous as a poet and scholar, one of his 4 sons by his concubine Lady Bian. Removing Lady Ding, he makes Lady Bian his principal wife. Her eldest son, Chao Pai, is furious at being bypassed and asks Jiasu's advice. As a result, he starts to turn up whenever his father goes out to fight, weeping and throwing himself on the floor as if deeply troubled at the risks his father is taking. In comparison, Chao Ji writes long poems about his father's exploits. Chao Pai also uses bribery to get those close to Cao Cao to sing his praises. Over time, Cao Cao is persuaded that Chao Pai is a more loyal son. Cao Cao is now very unsure what to do, so he asks advice from Jiasu. His advice is to choose Chao Pai, and so it is that he becomes the heir apparent. When his palace is completed, Cao Cao wants to create an exotic garden, and so sends men across the land to find rare plants. He also loves sweet oranges, and this brings his men to Wu and to visit Sun Quan. Now that a sort of peace has been established, he wishes to express his gratitude, and so he has 40 loads of these oranges prepared and sends them to Cao Cao's new palace. En route the porters stop to rest at the base of a hill. Suddenly an old man, half blind and lame, wearing old and odd clothes, appears. "Looks like you need some help," he says. "Can an old Taoist be of assistance?" And so saying, he heaves up one of the loads and goes some distance with them. When it comes time for him to leave, the others notice that their own loads seem to have become much lighter. As he departs, the old man says, "This poor Taoist is known as Wasiai, and has the Taoist name Master Blackhorn. He comes from the same village as your King of Wei. When you reach him, please give him my best wishes." And with that he disappears. The oranges arrive at Cao Cao's palace, and he eagerly takes one and peels it. To his surprise he finds nothing inside. Somewhat bewildered, he quizzes the head porter, who tells of the meeting with Zwasiai. At that precise moment who should be announced as having arrived, but Zwasiai. Summoning him to his presence, Cao Cao demands, "What kind of dark magic have you used to empty the oranges?" "Really," says Zwasiai. "What can have happened?" And, cutting open an orange, he shows that it is full and ripe. But no matter how many Chow Chow cuts open, they're all dried up and empty. Completely flummoxed, Chow Chow asks for an explanation, but before he begins, Zhuo Xi asks for food and drink. He then proceeds to eat huge quantities of food and drink vast amounts of wine. Despite the sheer quantity, this apparently has no ill effect upon him. So how do you do this? Demands Chow Chow. Zhuo Xi then tells his story. One day, when he was a student on a May mountain in Shu, he heard someone calling his name. The voice came from inside a stone wall. Yet when he examined the wall, he couldn't find anyone there. A clap of thunder made the wall break apart, and inside were 3 scrolls of sacred texts. Entitled Supreme Revelations of the Heavenly Texts, the 3 scrolls were named as one for heaven, one for earth, and one for humanity. Zhuo Xi then tells of the magical arts each book teaches, such as riding upon the clouds and the winds, passing through mountains, and how to change shape. Come and join me on a May mountain, he says to a bewildered Chow Chow, and become my student. Then I'll give you all 3 scrolls. I would love to do so. To tell you the truth, I've often thought about such a retreat. The problem is, who could I trust to run the court? Ah, says Zhuo Xi, why not Xuanda, who is after all a member of the imperial family? Otherwise I may have to send a magic sword to cut off your head. This is too much for Chow Chow, who denounces him. He is in league with Xuanda. And he orders his arrest. A dozen guards rush to seize Zhuo Xi and try to carry him off. But, no matter how hard they try, they cannot move him. Indeed, he appears to be fast asleep. When they do get him to the cell, the chains fall off, and, although they refuse him food and drink for 7 days, this has no adverse effect upon him whatsoever. Chow Chow has to admit he has no idea what to do with him. Later that day he is hosting a banquet, when suddenly Zhuo Xi appears, wooden clogs on his feet. Your Mightiness, says Zhuo Xi, your table is overflowing with food, but is there anything missing? I will happily fetch it for you. Dragon's liver to make a stew. Can you fetch me that? Retorts a bemused Chow Chow. No problem, says Zhuo Xi, who draws a dragon on the wall and waves his sleeve, whereupon the dragon's body opens, and out falls a fresh, hot liver. You had that up your sleeve, says Chow Chow dismissively. Now this is winter, and all nature is dead, says Zhuo Xi. Is there a beautiful flower you would like? A peony, that's all, says Chow. Simple, says Zhuo Xi. At his command a flower bowl is brought, and he splashes water on it, and suddenly there is a fully grown peony with 2 flowers. After this astonishing feat he is, of course, invited to join the banquet. When it comes time for the fish dish, Zhuo Xi says, of course, the best fish are from the river Song. And how do you intend fetching them from so far away? Asks an incredulous Chow. So easy, says Zhuo Xi, and, fishing in a pond below the window, he pulls out a couple of dozen large perch. These are just ordinary perch that were already there, says Chow Chow, to which Zhuo Xi replies, everyone knows most perch have 2 pouches, but river Song ones have 4. Of course, these fish prove to have 4. Now to cook them you need purple sprout ginger. And of course, challenged by Chow Chow, he produces from a golden bowl exactly that kind of ginger. It is presented to Chow Chow, who notices a book nestling in the bowl, and, taking it out, discovers it is called the New Treatise of Mengda. Glancing through it, he finds every word rings true to him. Zhuo Xi then takes a jade cup, which he fills with the best wine on the table. Drink this and you'll live to be 1,000 years old. Suspicious, Chow Chow says, you first. Zhuo Xi takes a jade pin from his hair, splits the wine in the cup down the middle, and drinks one side. But Chow Chow refuses, and in disgust Zhuo Xi throws the cup to the floor, where it becomes a white turtle dove, which flies around the hall. At this point Zhuo Xi disappears. Discovering that he has departed via the main gate, and in a rage at what he sees as a dangerous maverick magician, Chow Chow orders Su Chu and 300 soldiers to race after him and capture him. Rushing out of the main gate, they see Zhuo Xi wandering along without a care in the world just a little bit in front of them. But, try as they might, race as fast as they cannot overtake him, even though he just continues to stroll along. Climbing into the hills, Zhuo Xi is suddenly in a flock of sheep. Su Chu fires an arrow at him, but he simply disappears. Furious, Su Chu slaughters all the sheep, leaving the shepherd boy in tears. To his astonishment, one of the sheep heads suddenly speaks to him, telling him to put all the heads back on the sheep. Utterly terrified, the boy makes to escape, but another voice calls out, "Don't worry. I'll do it and bring your sheep back to life." When he looks round, he sees that Zhuo Xi is doing exactly that. Then, with a twitch of his gown, he disappears. News of this is reported by the lad's master, and Cao Cao has pictures drawn of Zhuo Xi and circulated around the country with orders that he be arrested. 3 days later, hundreds of men who look exactly like Zhuo Xi are herded into the capital. Chaos, of course, ensues, so Cao Cao orders that they be sprinkled with pig and sheep's blood and taken outside the city walls. Here 500 soldiers led by Cao Cao cut the heads off every one of them. But suddenly from each severed head a thin, black mist rises. Swirling into the sky, these mists merge together, and there they become none other than Zhuo Xi. Summoning a white crane, he seats himself upon it, claps his hands and says, "The rats of the earth follow the golden tiger, but one day the evil one will be no more." Cao Cao frantically orders his archers to fire, but a strong wind scatters everything. The executed men leap up and, clutching their severed heads, rush towards Cao Cao and his men. Cowering with terror and fainting with horror, the officials cover their faces. A powerful man can overthrow a whole country. But the powers of a Taoist immortal, far superior. Is this the end for Cao Cao? Let's find out.